Hi there. Above the kidneys, we've got a special structure known as the adrenal glands. In this video, we'll be looking at the names and functions of the hormones that are produced by the adrenal gland. This is Ed Online School. In this video, you and I are going to be looking at a complete guide to the adrenal glands. We're going to do this in a systematic way, and by the end of this video, you should be able to know what the adrenal glands are, the names and the functions of the hormones produced by the adrenal gland, and at the end of this video you should get some bonus tips. Hence, you should watch till the end to get the maximum value out of this video. Let's begin with talking about the definition of the adrenal glands. How can we define them? Well, like you have seen in many other videos about the endocrine glands, when defining any endocrine gland, we talk about its location and its general function. So we're going to just do the same for the adrenal glands also. We're going to talk about their shape, where they are located, and what they do. This is how we can define the adrenal glands. And it's very important to note that each kidney has got an adrenal gland above it. Now, how do these adrenal glands actually look internally? Well, we're going to focus on three main structures: the outermost part, an inner part, and the innermost part. The outer part of the adrenal gland is known as the capsule. Hence, this part protects the adrenal gland. The following part is known as the cortex. As you can see in the diagram, it has got two parts. Then we've got the innermost part known as the medulla. The cortex is divided into two parts because each of these two parts have got hormones that they produce. Now, let's talk about the hormones produced by the cortex and the medulla. We have got three hormones. The first one is aldosterone, produced in the adrenal cortex, cortisol, also produced in the adrenal cortex, and then we have adrenaline, which is produced in the adrenal medulla. These three hormones are mainly what give the adrenal glands their function. We're going to start with the first one, aldosterone. What does aldosterone do in the body? Well, this hormone is very important for the regulation of minerals in our body. Without this hormone, I think our blood levels wouldn't be regulated so well. Now, before we begin talking about the functions, just like I have done in most of the videos about the endocrine glands, I would like you to just remember this process through which a hormone reaches its target organ. The first thing is the hormone diffusing into the blood circulatory system and then getting lodged on a receptor, and then after that, the target organ gets affected by the hormone. It's very important to note that the adrenal gland is affected by a hormone already. If you can remember, the pituitary gland produces adrenocorticotropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone is going to come and affect the adrenal glands. When it reaches the adrenal glands, one of the things it's going to do is that it's going to cause the adrenal glands to start secreting this aldosterone. With that said and done, now let's continue. After the secretion of aldosterone, what happens in the body is that sodium will start getting reabsorbed from the urine passing through the nephrons or the kidneys. And hence, what happens is that our blood volumes get replenished. How does that happen? Well, the main reason why the reabsorption of sodium makes replenishment of blood volume is because as the sodium is getting reabsorbed, it gets reabsorbed with some water. Therefore, the volume of blood gets affected also. Blood pressure is also affected with this secretion of aldosterone. Generally, we can say that the secretion of aldosterone brings about increased sodium reabsorption or simply the regulation of blood volume. Now, what are the effects of cortisol? Well, what happens when cortisol is secreted is the following. We've got breakdown of proteins, breakdown of glycogen, the breakdown of adipose tissue. What you notice about the breaking down of these structures is that we'll have glucose. Therefore, secretion of cortisol brings about increased levels of glucose in the body. And it's as simple as that. regulation of glucose is the main importance of cortisol in our bodies. Now, as we'll be talking about the last hormone, I want you to notice that the way in which these hormones work is via a negative feedback mechanism. What is a negative feedback mechanism? Well, I'll try to just describe what a negative feedback mechanism is. Let's say we don't have enough glucose in our body, while on a bad side. Therefore, we need some positivity in our body to bring a rise in the glucose levels. Now, if we get too much of glucose levels, what do we need? We need something to drop those glucose levels. So what happens with these hormones is a similar process. When we have levels of glucose that are low, our bodies are going to make more cortisol, which is going to bring about increased levels of glucose. Now, when these levels of glucose become too much, our bodies are going to stop the secretion of this cortisol. Hence, our glucose levels will begin to drop slowly. This type of negative feedback mechanism is common even for aldosterone. So if we have too much blood volume, our bodies might stop reabsorbing sodium. If we have too little sodium, our bodies need to start reabsorbing sodium so that our blood volume is replenished. Now, we can continue talking about the third hormone, adrenaline. Adrenaline, like you can remember, is a hormone secreted by the adrenal medulla. What does it do? The secretion of adrenaline is going to bring about increased blood pressure, increased breakdown of lipids, and the formation of glucose. So you might think adrenaline and cortisol are kind of similar in their functioning. Yes, you won't be wrong by thinking about that. However, the manner in which these hormones are secreted is a bit different. The main result of adrenaline is that it will increase respiration, heart rate, alertness, which is very important when we're differentiating these two, and the increased response to stimuli. As you can see, there are some added functions of this adrenaline once it has been secreted. For cortisol, it ended on glucose. However, for adrenaline, you can see there's some stimuli involved, some alertness involved. Therefore, the main effect of adrenaline is increased body alertness. You have finally reached the bonus tip section of this video. In today's video, we have one tip for you that just talks about some nice facts about the adrenal gland hormones. We have got 3, as you already know. One thing you should know about aldosterone is that it is released when potassium builds up in blood. When there's too much of potassium, our body is going to use a negative feedback mechanism that is going to want to reduce levels of potassium. And so what's going to happen is that our bodies are going to start excreting potassium through the kidneys and then bringing sodium back into the blood. And we've talked about already the function of aldosterone, but I think this is something you also need to know. When sodium is being reabsorbed, the potassium is being secreted out of the blood. Now, look at cortisol, which is even much more interesting. Cortisol is known to be released so much when people are stressed or on long fasting. This is kind of actually simple to understand. When people are fasting, they rarely take in food, and therefore the body needs to have glucose, and hence it's going to break down those proteins we talked about, that glycogen and that adipose tissue. This is so as to give the body enough glucose. And as you know, glucose is a source of energy, and hence it's a way of showing why cortisol may also be essential for sex drive. The other hormone that's left is adrenaline. Adrenaline is also very interesting because it's one hormone that is nicknamed flight or fight hormone. Why? Because adrenaline is usually secreted in such situations when someone is afraid and they need to run away, which is flight, or when they need to be physically active. Maybe someone is angry, someone is aggressive, things like that. This is when adrenaline will be secreted. I'm sure you've had an experience like being in a group of friends and then amongst you there's someone who doesn't run very fast. Let's say a dog began chasing you. you'd find that that person who you thought doesn't run fast might be the one ahead of the crowd, ahead of the fastest runner. How can you explain this? Well, one explanation we can give is that that person had adrenaline getting secreted, which made a lot of glucose to be available for the muscles to use. The heart rate was up, and a lot of things just changed in that person's body that allowed them to have enough energy. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. Make sure you check the links in the description and comment down below so that we can get to interact.